VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Well, thank you for joining us on Crosstalk today, coming your way from VCY America. And ladies and gentlemen, we're having a news roundup day here today. I have got enough material for 3 days of news roundup. We're going to squeeze as much as we can into this program here today, and we thank you for joining us on the broadcast. A little bit later, Lord willing, we'll give you opportunity to call in on the program and to respond to these or so many other current event issues that are going on. But first today, we do want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you to our veterans. Coming from WND.com, as we approach Veterans Day this coming Sunday, the Lord's Day, the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, World War I ended. Folks, that is exactly 100 years ago this coming Sunday. Though the armistice was signed at 5 a.m. on November 11th, 1918, the fighting continued till 11 o'clock a.m., killing nearly 11,000 more men. In 1921, President Harding had the remains of an unknown soldier killed in France buried in the tomb of the unknown soldier at Arlington Cemetery. Inscribed on the tomb are the words, "Here rests the honored, glorious American soldier, known but to God." October 4th, 1924, at the dedication of the monument to the American Expeditionary Forces in Washington, D.C., President Calvin Coolidge said in part, "If anyone doubts the depth and sincerity of the attachment of the American people to their institutions and governments, if anyone doubts the sacrifices which they have been willing to make in behalf of these institutions and for what they believe to be welfare of other nations, let them gaze upon this monument and other like memorials that have been reared in every quarter of our broad land. Let them look upon the representative gatherings of our veterans and let them remember that America has dedicated itself to the service of God and man." Well, Armistice Day was changed to Veterans Day 1954 to honor all who have served defending the United States. Family Research Council reminds us that on Veterans Day, we should honor the service and sacrifice of members of the armed forces, both past and present, as well as their families. As Americans, we owe our freedom to God, who gave it, and to the members of the United States military who guard and protect it. The cost of maintaining our freedom is great. The fight for freedom is never over. We must fight to win it, and then we must fight to keep it. We are the land of the free because of the brave. We should honor those who serve in our military and never let their sacrifices be in vain. Because of God's blessing and because of the sacrifices of our military, no other nation enjoys such great freedoms as America. But our freedom and theirs, won at such a high price, is under fire in America today. And indeed it is, ladies and gentlemen. As WND.com reports, the World War I memorial, known as Bladensburg Cross, in Bladensburg, Maryland, is under attack from atheists and from Muslims. The U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to review lower court rulings ordering the destruction of a cross memorial in Maryland that honors 49 soldiers who gave their lives during World War I. The dispute began in 2014 when members of the American Humanist Association filed a lawsuit claiming the memorial discriminates against the soldiers who were not Christian. The 40-foot peace cross made of granite and cement built in 1925 at Maryland Route 450, U.S. Route 1 in Bladensburg, Maryland, was paid for by local families, businesses, and the American Legion. However, the state later acquired the property, has been paying for maintenance. A plate at the base lists the names of the 49 soldiers, and there are markers recognizing the American Legion, which raised money for it. Liberty Counsel, which has defended the cross, said the Supreme Court will consider whether or not a 93-year-old memorial to the fallen of World War I is unconstitutional because it's shaped like a cross. Yes, those freedoms continue to be fought for across the nation, and I do want to remind you, before we move to other stories today, of the poem written by U.S. Army officer Charles Michael Provence, who said, "It is the soldier, not the minister, who has given us freedom of religion. It is the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of the press. It is the soldier, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It is the soldier, not the campus organizer, who has given us freedom to protest. It is the soldier, not the lawyer, who has given us the right to a fair trial. It is the soldier, not the politician, who has given us the right to vote. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allows the protester to burn the flag. Our thanks to veterans, those of you who have served, those of you who are serving in our nation's military. President Trump is off to Paris today, a short weekend trip for he and his wife to join the French president at a military celebration marking the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. He will be returning to the White House on Sunday. Well, from FoxNews.com, without saying a word, a mysterious man in black clutching a semi-automatic pistol opened fire on a California bar packed with college students celebrating Country Night this past Wednesday, claiming the lives of at least 12 patrons, including a veteran's sheriff sergeant, nearing retirement before officers found the gunman dead. Hundreds of people were inside this borderline bar and grill in Thousand Oaks, California for this country music event. When shots rang out at about 11:20 p.m., Ventura County Police said at least 30 shots were fired. The gunman, armed with a .45 caliber handgun, used a smoke device to disorient and to confuse his targets. A sheriff there, Ventura County Sheriff Jeff Dean, described the scene as horrific. Sergeant Ron Helas, a 29-year law enforcement veteran, one of the first law enforcement officers on the scene, was shot, died early Thursday morning in the hospital, according to the Ventura County Sheriff's Department. The sheriff, choking back tears, said he undoubtedly saved lives by being the first to confront the gunman, saying he died a hero because he went in to save lives, to save other people's lives. He leaves behind a wife and son whom he called before entering. And from Fox News, a California man who escaped the mass shooting at a Las Vegas Country Music Festival in October 2017 was one of the 12 people murdered a little more than a year later in this shooting at this country music venue. Well, in the wake of the epic news conference showdown between President Trump and CNN's Jim Acosta, the White House late Wednesday suspended the reporter's press credentials, effectively banning him from White House access, reports WND.com. The action is being taken after Acosta's interaction with the White House press aide, who tried to remove the microphone from his hands as he tried to ask President Trump a second question. He didn't just try to ask, he was being belligerent, ladies and gentlemen. President Trump believes that in a free press and expects and welcomes tough questions of him and the administration, said Sarah Sanders. We will, however, never tolerate a reporter placing his hands on a young woman just trying to do her job as a White House intern. I want you to hear some of that exchange that took place between Jim Acosta as he challenged, was very belligerent and defying the president. The president was telling him to sit down. He just continued on.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to challenge you on one of the statements that you made in the tail end of the campaign in the midterms.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me that.
Why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants in this election to try to keep...
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process. And I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign...
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
Right. But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
Well, that's true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. This was an actual, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was
enough.
going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am.
Excuse me. That's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that that you may have.
I'm not concerned about anything with
you
the
may have
Russian
indictments
investigation because it's a hoax.
You,
That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts.
Well, I'm not a big fan of yours either. So
I understand.
To be honest.
So let me ask you a question, if I can. You repeatedly said
you aren't the best,
Mr. President. You repeatedly over the course of
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead,
Mr.
Very interesting indeed, because even after the president told him to sit down many times, to turn over the microphone, he turned away from the intern at the White House who was to gather the microphone from him. And then even after the microphone was gone from him, that's why he continued to stand up and to speak against and challenge the president in that regard. It's that lack of respect, lawlessness in that regard. But President Trump addressed the revocation of this press pass this morning. The Daily Caller reports that President Trump said, when you're in the White House, this is a very sacred place to me, a very special place. You have to treat the White House with respect. You have to treat the presidency with respect. Well, from townhall.com, various press organizations have decided to chime in on the Trump administration's decision to revoke Jim Acosta's hard press pass on Wednesday night. The White House Correspondents Association slammed the White House and encouraged them to reinstate access. Revoking access to the White House complex is a reaction out of line, they say, to the purported offense and is unacceptable. We urge the White House to immediately reverse this weak and misguided action. Well, from the Examiner, things are happening in Florida, ladies and gentlemen. Democrats are gearing up for a titanic legal fight over what could be multiple recounts in the state of Florida. In the balance are the governor's mansion and one of the U.S. Senate seats, which Republicans believe they had secured on Tuesday. But nearly 2 days after the polls closed, one county is still having problems with counting ballots, Broward County, a Democratic stronghold that played a pivotal role in the 2000 presidential election Florida recount. DNC Chairman Tom Perez said his party is sending in the legal cavalry to help Senator Bill Nelson, who has yet to concede his reelection effort against Rick Scott, the outgoing governor. Senator Marco Rubio blasted Broward election supervisors, alleging they were potentially violating state law and opening the door for Democratic lawyers to steal seats. And what's also interesting, Marco Rubio tweeting out, he said, law requires counties report early voting and vote by mail within 30 minutes after polls close. He said 43 hours after polls close, two Democratic strongholds, that's Broward County and Palm Beach County, are still counting and refusing to disclose how many ballots they have left to count. And a matter of fact, over 100 provisional ballots were rejected in Miami-Dade County Thursday after election officials said those people showed up to vote a second time. Yes, a second time in the same election, according to a local media report from thedailywire.com. More on the election here after the break. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, how can some lizards walk and even hang upside down on very smooth surfaces?
Chris, this is an amazing feat. Consider the gecko, which can stick to almost any surface, even a polished pane of glass. It attaches itself by tiny hairs on its feet, which are so tiny they're packed at about 500 per square inch. Each hair exerts a tiny chemical force which is attracted to the glass surface, and together they support the weight of the lizard. By curling and uncurling the toes, the lizards can break this bond and move on and take another step. You know, often engineers notice an ability in animals and attempt to mimic it in engineering design. And that's what they're trying to do in this case. Maybe by modeling the gecko lizard, we can even have Spider-Man clinging to smooth surfaces. Such things are possible if you go back to Genesis for your starting point.
Thanks for joining us for Back to Genesis.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. It's a news roundup Friday today. And just before we get back into the stories, just wanted to provide you an update on that Sudan project. You know, building the radio studios for Nehemiah Trumpet Call 97.3 in Sudan. We do have some updated photos on our website at vcyamerica.org. Just kind of scroll down until you see the Sudan project there. But vcyamerica.org. Click on that, and you'll see some of the updated pictures as the plastering is going on the building. And a note that came from William Levi said, we're hoping to finish the building and make it ready for service beginning January 2019. So far, windows and doors are set. Plastering is almost complete. Electrical work is ongoing. What we need now is plumbing and septic system to be in place to get the building operational. After this, we'll be sure to see solar power installed and the building powered and studio project furnished and ready to go. December 31st, 2018, we mark our final touches on the project. Be praying for this project as it continues on, but you'll be encouraged to see the updated photos. vcyamerica.org. Scroll down to the Sudan project. You'll find it there. Now back to the election on our News Roundup Friday today. Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott, who won re-election Tuesday, is calling for an investigation into alleged illegal voting after Project Veritas published a video showing poll workers in Texas saying non-citizens could vote and admitting that tons already had done so in early voting. This is from WND.com. I can't verify if this is accurate, Abbott wrote in a tweet. I can verify that it will be investigated, and if it is accurate, illegal votes will be tossed out and wrongdoers will be prosecuted. Also from WND.com, let's go to the state of Georgia. A poll worker in Georgia captured on video telling an undercover journalist posing as a voter that he should vote Democrat because the party has a, quote, a better platform. And that latest project in Project Veritas series, Secrets and Lies from Political Campaigns in 2018, the poll worker identified as John Hill told the undercover journalist not to inform anyone of his recommendation. Hill said, lowering his voice, quote, but the thing is right now, the Democrats have a better platform for you and for me. Interesting indeed. A poll worker caught advising to vote Democrat. Townhall.com. For months, gun control advocates in Washington state have peddled Initiative 1639 that moves to create stricter firearms laws. Well, Tuesday, 60% of Washingtonians voted in favor of ballot measure, the Seattle Times reported. It's a legislation, or rather now added this initiative, voted in to raise the age that someone can purchase a rifle to age 21, creates these enhanced background check systems similar to what's used for handguns, requires a person to complete a firearm safety training course, creates a, quote, common stand for secure gun storage. Alan Gottlieb, the founder and executive vice president of the Second Amendment Foundation, said he's prepared to go to court and challenge the legality of this measure. The state attorney general, Bob Ferguson, said he's prepared to fight for the measure in a court of law. Also from the Washington Examiner, while taking questions from reporters at the White House, President Trump said he has not yet asked his vice president whether he'd join him on the 2020 ticket. He then put Pence on the spot and asked him to be his running mate in a televised event. I haven't asked him, but I hope so. Where are you, Mike? Will you be my running mate, huh? Stand up, Mike. Please raise your right hand. No, I'm just kidding, Trump said. Pence stood up and nodded his head in affirmation. Will you? Thank you. Okay, good. The answer is yes, Trump said. Interesting indeed. Also, this is an interesting story that come to us from USA Today. In one of the biggest Democratic victories of the 2018 election, Florida voted overwhelmingly Tuesday to restore voting rights to an estimated 1.5 million former felons. From the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, there were three out of the four green ballot initiatives went down to defeat, while the fourth in Nevada requires a second ballot to advance. So things like a proposed carbon tax on emissions. That was in Washington. Colorado had a measure, Arizona also, and then Nevada as well. Also, this is from Jihad Watch. Very, very troubling story. The newly elected Muslim congresswoman, this is Rashida Tlaib. She wore the Palestinian flag at her primary victory celebration. Democratic Palestinian American Rashida Tlaib was draped in a Palestinian flag as she celebrated her primary victory with supporters this past August. Tuesday night, she won over 90% of the vote in the general election for Michigan's 13th congressional district seat vacated by John Conyers' resignation last December. Let's go to the state of Oklahoma. From creepingsharia.com, a man was arrested in Oklahoma City on a complaint of threatening to kill by use of explosive. Police said he was seen taking some suspicious photos at the Oklahoma City National Memorial, and that he called his sister in Iran to tell her that, quote, hundreds of people are going to die in Oklahoma City, and something very large is going to happen. Well, officials with the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Joint Terrorism Task Force contacted Oklahoma City police. Officials said the person identified as Amirimad Nayabayazi, probably got that wrong, but he's been on taking photos of unusual angles, places at the memorial on several occasions. He has a degree in petroleum engineering and worked for an Oklahoma City oil company. An arrest warrant issued for him. And to Michigan as well. A Michigan migrant who stabbed a police officer while screaming Allahu Akbar says he's innocent and rejecting a plea deal. This is what goes to trial November 6th. This Amor Fati says he's innocent. He made the remark Thursday during a final pretrial hearing in federal court in Flint. A judge has ordered marshals to use a minimum amount of force if necessary to bring him to court, but it apparently wasn't necessary because he refused to leave his cell to attend a previous hearing. He's a native of Tunisia, lives in Montreal, charged with committing an act of violence at an airport, interfering with security, and committing an act of terrorism transcending national boundaries. He's accused of stabbing Lieutenant Jeff Neville while yelling Allahu Akbar, the Arabic phrase for God is greater or God is bigger. The officer did survive. We're thankful for that. But you know what's going on in Sweden right now? According here to Jihad Watch, Sweden, a politician there, is charged with hate speech. What did he say? He said that jihadis scream Allahu Akbar before blowing themselves up. And they do, of course. Another jihadi scream Allahu Akbar before committing acts of violence. But the Swedish authorities who are charging Christopher Larson with hate speech are at war with reality, as are authorities all over the continent. So even to say the words, even for saying the words that jihadis scream Allahu Akbar before blowing themselves up, that itself is being deemed as hate speech. Israel National News is reporting that the home of a Jewish family in Las Vegas was tagged with anti-Semitic graffiti, and what she said was an anti-Semitic incident. Sarah Adia, a mother of three, said she called police after finding a swastika and the phrase Heil Hitler drawn on the door of her apartment Monday. The Las Vegas Review-Journal reported this past Monday. From the Daily Caller, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg seriously injured in Wednesday evening fall in her chambers at the U.S. Supreme Court. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg fell in her office at the court last evening, the Supreme Court Public Information Officer said yesterday morning. She went home, but after experiencing discomfort overnight, went to George Washington University Hospital early this morning. Tests showed that she fractured 3 ribs on her left side. She was admitted for observation and treatment. We do encourage you, Crosstalk listeners, to be praying for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Okay, from LifeSiteNews.com, a recent article in the New Yorker extolling the probable next governor of California reveals that Gavin Newsom helped his mother commit assisted suicide. Yeah, the new governor helped his mother commit assisted suicide. His sister Hillary said that when his mother had breast cancer in her 50s, he was difficult to reach. Gavin had trouble explaining to me how hard for him it was to be with her when she was dying. I had trouble explaining to him how much I needed him. And goes on to say that he was helped his own mother via euthanasia to take her life. Nancy Pelosi is been asked the question. She was asked by CNN about being the People's Speaker, going back as Speaker of the House. Wanted to share with you what she had to say.
What is your level of confidence that you'll be the Speaker of the House?
Total.
100%?
100%, yeah. I sent out my letter last night because I didn't ask anybody for support. because I was too busy winning an election, and I didn't think it was appropriate to ask members or candidates then. And how it works is the caucus nominates someone, and then they go to the floor. And
do you think there'll be another nominee other than you?
Doesn't matter. I've had a nominee every time, except maybe the very first time.
I don't think there was one
the very first time, but every other time I've had an opponent.
You don't think that you'll have to deal with unusual opposition?
If I do, I mean, that's politics. I mean, this is not a day at the beach. This is politics. And here I am. We've delivered the victory because we had the best possible candidates. And we had the best possible candidates who inspired the grassroots. We own the ground. And all of the organizations, whether it was about protect our care, protect our environment, all of those organizations worked to elect these people, and they want to see results. And we have to get moving with that. So without getting into the making of sausage around here, I feel very confident about where I am, and I feel very encouraged by an overwhelming support in my caucus that will go to the floor.
Well, the Democrats from the DailyWire.com had barely wrestled control of the House Tuesday night when they demanded President Donald Trump turn over his tax returns. Wednesday morning, Democrats declared that investigating Trump's personal financial records would be the first item on their agenda come January. Also, it was interesting, and this is from LifeNews.com, the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee was overheard Wednesday discussing Democrats' plans to investigate and try to impeach Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. This is New York Democratic Representative Gerald Nadler, who took a series of phone calls while riding the train from New York to Washington, D.C., but what he did not know was that the Federalist Molly Hemingway was also on the train and within earshot. He is set to take over the judiciary chairmanship as a result of the Democrats flipping the House in Tuesday's midterm election. And many have asked, will this be a party that is there for investigation or for legislation? The Washington Examiner reporting that President Trump saying this morning that he signed a presidential proclamation barring asylum protections for migrants who entered the United States illegally, saying we want people to come into our country, but they have to come into the country legally. Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker and Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen announced the new executive actions last evening that would restrict the ability of migrants to seek asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border. The new restrictions did not take effect until President Trump signed the proclamation today. Under these new changes, migrants who are seeking asylum will have to make their claims at official ports of entry. At points of entry, they would be processed in a controlled, orderly, and lawful manner, the new rule states. Well, other matters are going on as well, and tell you what, we're just seconds from the break, so let me share a few more stories with you after the break. This is Crosstalk coming your way from the VCY American Network, and it's a News Roundup Friday here today. Folks, after the break, I want to play for you a statement made by Louis Farrakhan with a warning to President Trump. A warning to the president saying that war with Iran will end America as you know it. You'll want to hear what he has to say after the break. This is Crosstalk on VCY America.
We are concerned for our nation. The pathway on which we're headed is one destined for destruction. Collectively, our nation celebrates what God calls an abomination. Children are killed daily by abortion. Secularism is on the increase. The Bible and Christianity under attack. That which is evil is declared good, and that which is good is declared evil. In the book, The Coming Destruction of America, Pastor Neil Jackson undertakes a biblical examination of the judgments of God upon a land. You'll see what happens to a nation that rejects God's ways, rejects God's words, and rejects God's warning. It's a book that calls America to repentance to avoid the judgment of God upon our beloved land. This hardcover book, The Coming Destruction of America, is available for a donation of $17 or more to VCY. Obtain your copy by calling 1-800-729-9829. 1-800-729-9829.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. It's a News Roundup Friday here today, and have a few more stories we'd like to share with you before opening up the phone lines today here on the broadcast. And certainly we are finding Louis Farrakhan back in the news again, Nation of Islam leader, and FoxNews.com has a story. A notorious anti-Semite recently compared Jewish people to termites. He led a Death to America chant in Iran. Continued his lifelong knack for repugnant remarks by warning President Trump yesterday not to pull the trigger of war in the Middle East at the insistence of Israel. Farrakhan, he's 85 years old. He's in the Islamic Republic when he criticized the Trump administration for snapping back economic sanctions on Iran after the U.S. pulled out of a landmark nuclear deal signed during the Obama administration, never ratified by the U.S. Senate. He told journalists in Tehran that he's begging Trump to be very, very careful and that this war will trigger another kind of war, which will bring China, Russia, and all the nations into a war. Sounds prophetical, doesn't it, folks? He said the war will end America as you know it. Listen to what Louis Farrakhan had to say.
I am begging our president and the government that supports him to be very, very careful, because if the trigger of war in the Middle East is pulled by you using your surrogates at the insistence of Israel, then the war will trigger another kind of war which will bring China, Russia, all of the nations into a war. And it bothers me to say this to you, Mr. President, but the war will end America as you know it. When these Iranians chant death to America, death to Israel, no chant can bring about your death, but it is your policies that are eroding trust for you in the world, favor for you in the world. And if you do this, you will bring about, not the Iranian chant, you will bring about the death of the greatest nation.
Louis Farrakhan with his warning to President Donald Trump. Let me get a few other stories in today here on the broadcast, and this is interesting. A story that came to us from the Population Research Institute. The Human Rights Committee at the United Nations office in Geneva has adopted a radically pro-abortion document that could have lasting implications for pro-life laws worldwide. The document is known as General Comment Number 36. It's the first of its kind to declare that states must legalize abortion in cases of rape, incest, health of the mother, and when the pregnancy is not viable. The general comment also calls on nations to remove laws that impose criminal penalties on healthcare workers who perform illegal abortions, claiming that the mere enforcement of the pro-life laws compels women and girls to resort to unsafe abortion. The committee also declared that states may not regulate abortion in a manner that compels women to resort to unsafe abortion, and that states should revise their abortion laws accordingly. States must legalize abortion. That's their member nations or member states, says the UN Human Rights Committee. By the way, the Daily Caller reporting that D.C. police are investigating a left-wing's mob protest at Fox News host Tucker Carlson's house Wednesday evening as a suspected hate crime with anti-political motivations, according to a police report obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation. The mob, organized by the Antifa group Smash Racism DC, posted Carlson's Washington address online, sent a mob to his house calling him a racist scumbag, and demanded that he flee the city. Carlson is a co-founder of the Daily Caller News Foundation, who was at Fox News studio when the mob arrived at his home. His wife, who was at home alone at the time, reported that she heard loud banging and pounding on her front door, according to the local police report. She called the police after witnessing a large group of people that had a bullhorn and were chanting loudly outside the home. Someone started throwing himself against the front door and actually cracked the front door, Carlson told the Washington Post. Police arrived at the scene, found a group of approximately 20 people, the report said. It was discovered that unknown persons spray-painted an anarchy symbol on the driveway. There were also signs left on the vehicles parked in the driveway, as well as a sign left on the front door of the home. Video of the incident shows the protesters carrying signs and chanting, "Tucker Carlson, we will fight. We know where you sleep at night." It's unclear why no one has been arrested. From the Washington Examiner, the Trump administration will exempt employers from providing insurance coverage for birth control if it conflicts with their religious or moral beliefs, scaling back a rule created under the Obama administration. The rule, released Wednesday, would take effect in 60 days, will affect between 6,400 and 127,000 women, according to the Trump administration. The religious exemption applies to any type of employer, but the moral exemption doesn't apply to publicly traded businesses or government entities. Also, the rules, one of the rules about on the basis of sincerely held religious beliefs. Another protects businesses and nonprofits. Exemptions do not extend to government entities, as we mentioned. But Planned Parenthood is slamming the president for stopping taxpayer funding of abortion, saying he hates women. Let's open our phone lines. If you'd like to comment on these or other news-related issues, there's so much going on yet with the elections, matters in Florida, matters going on in Georgia right now as well. Our number to crosstalk is 800-733-9829, 800-733-9829. Very interesting that the University of Wyoming offering students a trip to the Mexican-American border to promote global citizenship, reports Campus Reform. The University of Wyoming is sponsoring a spring break trip to explore social justice at the U.S.-Mexico border. The school's alternative spring break program offers a number of university-sponsored experimental learning or excursions for students during spring break, but the university says the mission of the trips is to promote global citizenship. Why are people attending these secular institutions? Market Watch reports that the Girl Scouts say a Boy Scout rebranding effort is cutting into their turf, causing confusion, and now the Girl Scouts are suing the Boy Scouts for trademark infringement. Yeah, because Boy Scouts have now announced that they're accepting girls to be in the scouting program, and Girl Scouts, hey, you can't use that terms like scouts or scouting by themselves in connection with services offered to girls, or to rebrand itself as the Scouts. And don't we have another case where somebody is seeking to, who is 69 years old, who wants to be identified as being 49 years old and has filed a lawsuit pertaining to that end? We are in a mixed-up world. Let's go to the phone lines. We have Fred calling from Milwaukee. Fred, thanks for calling Crosstalk. You're on the air.
Yes, I was wondering if you'd seen the video called Stealing the Vote at stealingthevote.com about the DeBolt Company rigging the voting machines across America to turn votes from one candidate to another after they're cast.
I have not seen that specific video, but I have seen the news stories that have come out that were reported even this election with people complaining that the machines were changing their votes.
It's a documentary.
Thank you. Sue in Salina, Kansas, you're on the air.
Hi, I just wanted to ask if I could ask for prayer for the Pepperdine University in Malibu. They're a Christian school. The Woolsey fire is heading right for them now. They're being evacuated. There's nothing between the fire and the campus but dry grass. The fire is 0% contained. And if you would just ask if people would pray for everyone at the school. They're being evacuated. I know they need our prayers. They also lost an 18-year-old freshman killed at the shooting yesterday. So if we would just ask for people to pray for Pepperdine and, of course, for our country after these elections especially.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the call. Lance calling from Michigan. You're on the air.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to comment on the law that President Obama just recently, President Trump rolled back the law of President Obama regarding the abortion, and just the fact of him saying that, Planned Parenthood saying that he's, a woman hater, but, nobody seems to have any concern for the unheard voice of a child in the womb, you know?
Yeah.
That's just, to me, totally wrong.
Yeah. It is. Thank you for the call here, Lance. And where is Planned Parenthood? When there is those who are killing their babies in the womb because it's a girl instead of a boy. Our phone number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. I have a couple of open lines. Gloria is calling from Newport, Oregon. You're on the air, Gloria.
Hi. It's another abortion thing. I live in Oregon, and I don't believe it. All the people I've met the last 6 months in my own business have been against funding abortion, and they're claiming that we voted for it. They're also saying we voted to keep the sanctuary state, which I have met nobody that wants to do that. And we voted in Kate Brown, which I haven't met anybody who wants Kate Brown back in. I don't know if there's a fraud going on. I've called the Secretary of State and all the way down, the elections people, and they just say, oh, no, it's all watched very carefully. I don't know. I don't even know what to think after this.
Thank you, Gloria. I appreciate your calls. And what we're seeing is, when we lose the rule of law and we see the resistance that is growing and it's anarchy that is taking place and man's heart continually doing that which is evil reminds me of the time of Noah, in which that's how man was described, man's heart continuously doing that which was evil. And what a warning to us, as Scripture says, as in the days of Noah, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Let's continue in prayer and being salt and light. Gloria, thank you for the call. We're going next to Stuart calling from Sarasota, Florida. You're on the air, Stuart.
Hey, how's it going?
Fine.
I just wanted to make a comment about the Planned Parenthood funding. I find it quite strange that they get funding from the federal government, and that's using our tax dollars, but then in turn that's used to lobby against essentially America's interests, and kind of counteract the argument that's going on right now.
It doesn't, when we think about the millions of dollars poured into these elections and what they're saying, that one tax dollar was used for those purposes, makes you really question it, doesn't it?
Yeah, roger that.
Yeah. Thank you for the call, Stuart. Christine in West Allis, Wisconsin, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, Jim. Yeah, my comment is basically this. We got to keep praying. First of all, this is full-blown spiritual warfare, all the way down to what's happening with our president for standing up for Christian values. Whether or not he's saved is a different story, but he's standing up for the Constitution and Christian values. Tucker Carlson's wife, she doesn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that. And why the police didn't arrest any of these people, I don't understand that. And, right, just pray that the liberal agenda, even though they took the House, it isn't that huge of a margin. Pray that no more, that the Lord does something to put a plug in it. That's all we can do, is keep praying and keep doing what we're doing. Because, right, at the end of the day, Jesus is on the throne. He gave the liberals just enough to where they should be putting a stopper in it, but they're not, because they're mad.
Thank you for the call here, Christine. Up against a break. We'll be back in just 1 minute. Our telephone line to Crosstalk is 800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829. We'll be right back. You're listening to Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website is worldviewradio.com. Would you be shocked to find out that Russia, China, North Korea, South Korea, the United Kingdom, Israel, and Taiwan have all made preparations for an EMP attack? An EMP attack stands for an electromagnetic pulse. It is, when a nation like a rogue state like China, Russia, Iran, would put a nuclear device up into the atmosphere and detonate it, creating an EMP, or electromagnetic pulse. If they were to detonate one up over the U.S. off of a cargo ship or fishing vessel, it could put America in complete darkness. In fact, a congressional study finds that 90% of Americans would be dead within 1 year from disease, starvation, and civil unrest. Ironically, the nations that have EMP and that are protected are in Bible prophecy.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. By the way, as Washington Times reported, one of Justice Brett Kavanaugh's accusers admitted this week that she made up her lurid tale of a backseat car rape, saying it was a tactic to try to derail the judge's confirmation to the Supreme Court. Yet another accuser admitting to fabricating this rape story. Also, let me just mention, here's from townhall.com, the Keystone Pipeline is on hold. A federal judge said that the Trump administration has to go back to review the impacts that the project will have on climate change and the surrounding environments. This is a situation here where a federal judge now has blocked the Keystone Pipeline from moving forward. Newport, Oregon. We have Christina online. Hi, Christina. You're on the air.
Hi. I would just like to say to Gloria.
Okay. And Christina, what's your point?
I voted for Kate Brown.
Okay. Robert in Salina, Kansas. You're on the air.
Yes. I'm just want to comment on President Trump defunding Planned Parenthood. And it seems to me that that is a good argument for his being pro-African American, because we know that the abortion mills are much more that the African American communities, they have a much higher incidence of abortion than others. And it seems to me that by defunding that and defunding abortions, that he is pro-African American. So when the left says he isn't, I'm just wondering what they're basing their argument on.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Jerry is calling from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. You're on the air.
Thank you. 20 people attacking Tucker Carlson's home like that, and I am an independent, by the way, attacking his home. They're just cowards. They really are. To terrorize his wife like that is reprehensible. Thank you.
Thank you for your call. Donald in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. You're on the air.
Well, good afternoon. I mean, for several years I've been talking about, voting machines are switching votes and so on, the electronic stuff anyway. So anyway, I went to my polling place Tuesday afternoon, and it really got to find that only paper ballots were offered. There were no electronic machines, so smartmatic or otherwise, just paper ballots. So I was very pleased with that.
Okay, thank you, Donald. Interesting statement here from the White House, and this is in advance of President Trump's pro-life campaign. President Trump declaring November as National Adoption Month. His statement from the White House leaves little doubt about his pro-life stance, declaring Americans must recognize that adoption is a powerful way to show women that they are not alone in an unexpected pregnancy. During National Adoption Month, he said, we recognize the immeasurable love and support that adoptive families, parents and families provide to hundreds of thousands of children each year. We celebrate the life-changing act of adoption, bring attention to the millions of Americans who are eager to adopt, and express our gratitude to the families who've welcomed children into their lives and homes. Trump recognized the courage of mothers who place their children for adoption. Also from WND.com, lawyers with First Liberty Institute, one of the nation's premier defenders of religious liberty, have confronted a Texas high school principal's decision to quarantine students who wanted to pray together during non-class time. He said, quote, "Y'all don't do that again." Principal Lee Frost told the students after they met during a lunch period, sat at an empty table and quietly prayed together, the Institute said. Frost then told the students that they could pray only if they went on the cafeteria stage behind the curtain outside of the school building or in the gym while no one was present. In other words, the students were told they could not pray in front of other students, First Liberty explained. The principal telling these praying students, y'all don't do that again. You know, it is amazing how we continue to complain. Where was God when this happened? And where was God when that happened? And we talk about school shootings. Here we have young people gathering to pray and the principal saying, y'all don't do that again. How is it that God can bless a nation that continues to thumb their nose at him and to kick him out? Say, God, you're not wanted here. Also, it's interesting, though, that the Council on American Islamic Relations got a library in Texas to remove a book that was critical of Al-Qaeda. Wonder how they do it. And yet books that mock Christianity, wow, we got extra room on our shelf. Rich in Burlington, you're on the air.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. With all the discussion about President Bush withholding funds about abortion from the federal government, my recollection is when Obama and Pelosi got together with the Obamacare Act, they were holding out. There was one senator, I believe his name was Bill Nelson from, I think it was Kansas, that had to be promised that Obamacare would never fund abortion. Where's the discussion on that? That promise was broken before the ink was even dry on that bill.
Yeah. Yep, that was a senator, and he finally gave way to it because he received that such a promise. Senator Bill Nelson, and I've got my names mixed up, but nonetheless, you're right. There was such a senator in which he gave his vote, though he claimed to be pro-life, but gave it to the Democrats in order to advance Obamacare.
Yeah, and nothing said about that. I don't understand that.
Thank you for the call. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Let's see. That's all the time we're going to have for lines calls here today because we're down to just a minute. We also shared earlier this week when Matt Staver was on with us about the Attorney General Jeff Sessions resigned. That would be at the president's request. And from the White House, we're pleased to announce that Matthew Whitaker, Chief Staff to Attorney General Jeff Sessions at the Department of Justice, will become the new acting Attorney General of the United States. He will serve our country well. Trump wrote in a tweet, in the subsequent tweet, Trump thanks Sessions for his service, added a permanent replacement will be nominated at a later date. Would you be praying? Be praying as President Trump makes such a nomination to this very, very critical position of Attorney General. Also, the Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis, said he has no plans to step down and leave the Trump administration following the midterm elections. Well, friends, it is a critical time for our nation, isn't it? And to be praying for this nation and to be praying for those who are in authority over us that we might lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. Very, very critical times in which we live. And certainly we need to let our lights so shine before men that we may see our good works and glorify our Father which is in heaven. Friends, the Lord's Day is coming up. I trust you'll be in a Bible-believing, Bible-preaching local church. Thanks for tuning in today and all this week here on Crosstalk, coming your way from the VCY America Network.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the Internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.